It's tourney time. And with FanDuel's Dog of the Day, you can get a daily profit boost during the College Conference Championships to bet on any underdog. So get ready to celebrate some upsets.
No one saw that coming, except for me, baby.
21 plus in present in select states. Opt-in required. Minimum plus 100 odds required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable profit boost tokens. Restrictions apply, including token expiration and max wager amount. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Every day, thousands of Comcast engineers and technologists, like Kunle, put people at the heart of everything they create.
In the average household, there are dozens of connected devices. Here in the Comcast family, we're building an integrated in-home Wi-Fi solution for millions of families like my own. It brings people together in meaningful ways.
Kunle and his team are building a Wi-Fi experience that connects 1 billion devices every year. Learn more about how Comcast is redefining the future of connectivity at comcastcorporation.com/Wi-Fi.
Hello, Beat Check listeners. I'm Gosia Wozniacka, and I'm the environmental reporter with The Oregonian. Today, I'm with Kim Kosmas, a senior public education officer with Portland Fire and Rescue in the Fire Prevention Division. Kim also manages the wildfire preparedness program for the city. With wildfire season coming up in a couple months and Southern California still reeling from the January wildfires, we're going to talk today about Portland's plans to protect one of its crown jewels, Forest Park. We'll also discuss what you can do to protect your home and yourself from wildfire, especially if you live in an area that's near Forest Park. So let's get started. Welcome to the show, Kim. Thanks for taking the time to speak with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I wanted to start with, Forest Park is kind of a unique place, one of the largest or the largest city urban parks in the U.S. And I'm wondering if you can talk about what the challenges of fighting a large fire in Forest Park are.
Well, one of the biggest things for us as Portland Fire is locating the fires. A lot of times when there's fires in a natural area, we'll get a call that there's smoke in the area. And so it makes it challenging just not only to know where that fire is, but once it's located, how do we get there? What's the best route? What equipment do we need? And do we have a water source, hydrants and other things? So in the city, we have a lot of benefits because we have hydrants pretty much throughout the entire city. There are some areas that don't have them, but we have water tenders that carry a large number of gallons of water that we would be able to bring to the incidents if it was needed. But there are other things that have been put in place. Our partners, PGE, they have been working really hard with not only protecting their infrastructure, but working with other companies to protect the communities that surround these areas where they have their power lines. And Pano 360 is that partner with PGE that has been installing basically like a new age fire watch camera system in a lot of the areas like in Bull Run, in Forest Park area, Washington County, Multnomah County, and a lot of where the infrastructure is within a lot of our natural areas like Bull Run and Forest Park. And so having these cameras that are watching for plumes of smoke that are not necessarily permitted agricultural burns or a structure fire that's within the city, it is something that we do get notice if there are plumes of smoke in these natural areas that triangulate with the other cameras that they have installed in the area to be able to get within 0.01 miles of accuracy. So that's been a huge help, knowing that that's an additional technology that is available for us if needed, if there was a fire to start in some of these larger natural areas like Forest Park. So that is part of the struggle, when there's fires happening in these areas, but that has greatly reduced our time in being able to gain access and respond to these areas to get to the fire as quickly as we can, because time is of essence, especially if it's in the middle of the summer. Things are really dry. Humidity levels have been low because of the high temperatures that we see in our summers now. And if there's a wind event that's occurring as well, we need to get there as quickly as we can to be able to get that under control before it grows into something that may not be as manageable.
Got it. And these cameras, you mentioned they're really modern, so they use AI to alert the fire.
Not AI. I mean, well, the cameras are always watching 24/7, but it always is monitored 24/7 as well. So there is that factor too.
Okay. Forest Park, has a lot of trees and is thought of this like very lush, humid, cool environment, especially, in the middle of winter. People kind of gravitate there for those reasons. Like, was there kind of a moment for the Fire Bureau where, everyone came to the realization that, like, while this is a very lush, green, humid oasis, that it also could, burn and be something that needs to be addressed?
Yes. With the change of climate, the vegetation and downed trees and things that have accumulated in areas like Forest Park over the years have added to the fuel load. We call it fuel. Anything basically that I refer to as fuel is like anything that can burn. So vegetation, down trees, structures, all of that to us is seen as fuel. And so since we do not allow fire in the landscape, especially in the Portland area, it's just not something that is allowable. It does happen, but we don't have prescribed burns in many of the areas throughout the city just because of the life safety hazard. And so because fire is not allowed to burn on the landscape in areas like Forest Park, there is an accumulation of a fuel load in there. And now that we are having the drier summers, climate is getting hotter and drier. That fuel that used to not really be seen as fuel, it used to be called like the asbestos forest because it was always very humid and wet and damp, and it was never anything that would really truly be able to sustain a flame. It's changing. And so because the landscape is changing, now the potential for fires to occur in areas like this under the right conditions, it could happen. So there's a lot of efforts going into preparation for wildfire season. Our crews are always being trained up. We are all trained up on being wildland firefighters to a certain degree, but we do have teams that actually do deploy during wildfire season to fires that are, yes, not only in our area, but other jurisdictions and other states. So we do a lot of work to maintain our level of readiness and are always prepared and working on different scenarios that could happen in these areas and be ready to respond as needed.
Got it. Have we ever had a fire in Forest Park, in large or small?
Yeah, there was like 80 years ago, there was a large fire that happened in Forest Park, and it was about 3,000 acres that burned in 2 days. There were not many people living in these areas at that time compared to how it is now. But we did have a number of firefighters then that were fighting that fire. There was no air support. It was during the war at the time. And so it was all boots on the ground work that was needed to fight these fires. So there have been fires that have occurred in Forest Park since then. They've been smaller fires, not even acres. And yet with these fires that have happened recently, they get up maybe to 100 by 100 feet or maybe 200 by 200 feet in size. But our crews are close by. We have water available. We're able to get to them quickly before they can grow and get them under control. And so we do have the benefit of having water available, having our stations close by and sprinkled basically throughout the city and available to respond very, very quickly and have a very low time that it takes for us to actually get there. It's quick response.
Got it. You mentioned fire stations. Are there a couple surrounding Forest Park? Which ones sort of are the main closest ones?
There is Station 22 that's down in St. John's area on the other side of the Willamette River. Then you have Station 27 that's up on Skyline Boulevard. And there's Station 16, which is also on Sylvan, so at the southern end. So we do have those available. There's another station that's down on Front Avenue. It's one of our boat stations, but they are also available to respond if needed. So we do have a good number of stations close by Forest Park and quick access if needed.
Got it. Are there any fire hydrants in the park itself?
No, there are no. There are some in the surrounding areas, but none within Forest Park.
None in the park.
And yet we do have the water tenders, and we do have patrols that is shared between Station 22 on the lower side of Forest Park and Station 27 on Skyline that do patrols through Forest Park throughout the wildfire season.
Got it. Yeah, I was going to ask you because you mentioned the cameras as one way to sort of look into the more remote areas. And so it sounds like you have patrols throughout the summer, essentially when it's the driest time. And then I think there's some rangers as well in the park.
Yes.
Do they help?
Definitely. I mean, they're always in the park, and they've increased the number of rangers that are actually in the park on a daily basis, which is great. During wildfire season, we also do partner with the park rangers and conduct patrols in areas of the natural areas and parks throughout the city that may have houseless campers. And because a lot of the fires that have happened in the natural areas have been caused by like warming and cooking fires. And so during wildfire season, especially, we do patrols to look for individuals that need to get moved into a safer place to live, because I mean, it's a wildfire hazard zone for a reason. And so it's not safe for them to live in these areas, and using their warming and cooking fires has been the cause of some of those fires in our natural areas.
Got it. In terms of working to prevent these fires, in addition to what you just described, are there any sort of mitigation projects inside or on the outskirts of the park that address specifically trees and vegetation that might be considered fuel?
Yeah, we actually have a wildfire preparedness program. And part of that is basically educating community members on what they can do to protect their own properties and homes from the potential of wildfires. Hardening their homes against the ember intrusion from wildfires is a big culprit of what caused a lot of the homes to burn in the 2020 fires. And the Labor Day fires, a lot of the homes burned from the inside out. And then creating defensible space around their home with the type of vegetation that they have, the type of fuel breaks that they have, which can be driveways or even non-combustible pathways on their properties, just to break up the continuity of the vegetation as it gets closer to the home, so they can kind of break up that pathway. So then basically as a fire approaches a home, it runs out of things to burn. So, and that includes the types of products that they use to build their homes or to renovate their homes with that are, we recommend products that are non-combustible or fire resistive. So they don't have like items that could be seen as like kindling on or around their home. Any petroleum-based products, those things can burn. And so kind of changing how everything is stored around their home, what they build, like their decks out of, how they protect the screens from embers coming through, putting on an 1/8-inch screen on any vents and like low decks or anything to enclose them so that all the leaves and things that collect underneath their decks, for example, that's kindling for those embers that could start a fire. And so there's lots of ways they can actually, as we call it, harden the home so that embers can't find a way to start fires in or around their home if there is a wildfire in the area. But it also not only protects the home from wildfires like coming to their home, it can always protect the natural areas and forests that surround some of these homes, because home fires happen and they can extend to the natural areas as well. So it kind of goes both ways.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure if these homes are like right on the edge of the park, or some of them are kind of inside the park, it can sort of make or break the fire as well.
Yeah, there's been, over the last, 40 years, there's been a huge increase of people living within and around the wildfire hazard zone areas. And so therefore, there's been an increase in wildfires because you have an increase in that human factor that you just cannot control. Because people do start fires. It just happens. It's not like it's on purpose, but it does happen. I mean, the person that puts the briquettes on the back deck that they think are gone, are done, that there's no little embers or anything still burning in there. That happens a lot. And that's where fires started. Every fire starts small. So it can be something as simple as putting them on the back porch, not thinking about it. Then you have a deck fire that extends to the home and to the natural areas as well. So everyone has to be responsible and just kind of have a new lens that they add to themselves. And that's what we educate people about, is how they can keep themselves safe, protect themselves, their homes and families, and our natural resources like Forest Park. It's like everyone has a part to play.
Right. And it sounds like these programs are not mandatory, but you're doing a fair share of educating homeowners. Or do they get any help with sort of figuring out what to do? Because some of this sounds a little complicated.
Yeah, we educate the public in general. We have a lot of information on our website and such, but we work with a lot of the community groups that want to take it another level and become like a FireWise community, where a neighborhood or community of any size, they can work towards becoming more wildfire resilient together. And it creates a more holistic view from the community's side as far as what they can do, not only for their own property, but for their community as a whole, to create a more resilient community. So if something happens, then they're able to respond, be able to recover quickly. If a wildfire happens, and it's not going to be catastrophic like we've seen in the LA fires. And we provide home assessments for individuals that live within a wildfire hazard zone area or close to it. And it's basically a 360 walk around of the home. We look at all the aspects of what they have on and around the home, what the home is built of, what they have stored around the home, what kind of plants they have around the home, and give them recommendations on what they can do to reduce their risk. Adding that 1/8 inch screening, moving the wood pile away from the house like 30 feet, changing out the last section of their fence that's wood fence connected to the home so they don't have that fuse that could bring a fire to the side of their home and create a structure fire. So we give them a whole 3-page report of our recommendations once we've done that free home assessment, so then they can learn and have that to-do list about what they can do to keep themselves safe. And we tell people it's a marathon and it's not a sprint. They do what they can. And some items might be higher ticket items. Some are very, very easy to do. But we tell people to focus on the home first and then work out from there.
That's great that these are available to the community. And it's not just Forest Park, right? I mean, it's anyone who lives sort of in that urban wildland interface, like Powell Butte or Mount Tabor Park or any other of the large natural areas.
Even Oaks Bottom. There's a lot of areas around the city, mostly the West Hills. But like you said, Rocky Butte, Powell Butte, Kelly Butte. I mean, there's a lot of different areas. Oaks Bottom, the Willamette Bluffs. That's another area that we've had some big fires in the past. And so there's a lot of work that can be done and simple things that can be done. But it's more like being aware is the biggest piece. Being aware, knowing what your options are and what you can do to keep yourself safe and reduce the risk, and engage other community members in these areas so that it can be a bigger effort to reduce the risk. And we are always partnered with those communities that are working to reduce their risk and are looking for more communities that live in these areas to also reduce their risk, because it's very important for people to do this work, because with the way things are going, the way the weather's changing, and how the climate is getting warmer and drier in our area, it's not going to get any better anytime soon. It's going to continue down this road. So everything's changing on the ground around us. We have to do everything we can to keep up with it and to switch things out, like that arborvitae that might be that privacy fence next to our house that burns like Roman candles, basically. So things like that, that can be changed out, and to make your home and property safer, and in turn, your community safer as well and more resilient.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the one piece we haven't talked about is the hikers. Obviously, Forest Park specifically is a really big draw for hikers, tourists, etc. Um, is there a plan for them if really large wildfire were to happen?
Well,
How do they? What should they be aware of when they're hiking?
right. The biggest thing that we tell people too with being prepared is to, have a go bag, be signed up for different alert systems like publicalerts.org that we have here in Portland. So then if there is an emergency, they will get notifications. There's other automatic notifications that will go out to mobile phones, depending on where you are geologically. If you're in that area, then you will get notice also. It's like an automatic thing that happens whenever there's an emergency for notifications that there may be an evacuation in certain areas. But there are challenges in areas like Forest Park because you don't always have connectivity. So it's important for people to be signed up for publicalerts.org, like download the map wherever you're going to be hiking and be able to know where you are. So then you can find the routes to get out quickly. In the 2020 fires that occurred, there was an emergency declaration for the city of Portland because those fires were happening close to our area. They actually shut down the natural areas. And so park rangers were out. People were being told, do not go into the park areas. That had never happened before. And so something similar like that could happen again, where there's a large wildfire in our area. And that may also happen again, where they shut down the natural areas so people aren't going in to hike. But even then, people were still going in. So you cannot stop everybody. But what we can do is encourage people not to go hiking on days that there might be a red flag warning where there's high winds, where if there is a spark, those winds could get something going. And if it's an area like Forest Park, it would not be a good time to be in Forest Park because we are going to be focusing on our efforts to contain those fires if one were to start. And life safety is our very top focus. So evacuating people would be our first priority, but we would always be splitting our crews to fight that fire as well. Yeah. So the more people that can be out of the area, the more we can focus our efforts on fighting that fire and protecting our natural areas and any structures in the area as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously it's really difficult to find hikers in some of the really remote parts of the park.
Right.
So it's,
but the one thing I do want to say that with the work that we're educating people on to prepare their homes and properties for that potential of a wildfire, even if they create like 10 to 20 feet of defensible space where if a fire were to approach, your home would be able to withstand a wildfire on its own without any kind of intervention. And that's really scientifically what's been proven. And so if people do the work, they do their homework, they are prepared, they evacuate when the time is needed. If there is an incident in the area, the community as a whole would have a better chance of surviving just because of what they've done ahead of time. Because honestly, we don't have enough personnel or equipment to be able to protect every single home in those areas that may be affected by a large wildfire. Yeah. So it's super important for people to be aware and to do that work ahead of time so we can be prepared and not look back and say, what could we have done differently and look at like LA. We don't want that to happen here. Yeah.
As the city prepares for the potential of a large fire in Forest Park at some point, maybe in the future, is there something that you have identified as a fire bureau as a challenge currently in the park that should be overcome? Something that should be improved? I don't know, like more roads or fire hydrants or something else that we should work towards getting into the park to make firefighting, fire response easier?
Well, the biggest thing with wildfires is if it stays on the ground and it's a low intensity fire, and that's where it just burns on the ground, burns around the bases of the trees and keeps on going. that's like a good fire. I mean, it may sound weird hearing that, but we want it to be a low intensity fire. So removing the plants that grow up onto the trees that we refer to as ladder fuels that can carry the fire from the ground up into the trees and the treetops. There's been a lot of work that's been done removing the invasives that like to climb on things like the blackberries, the clematis and ivy. Ivy is such a huge issue, and it's all throughout Portland. Yet there's a lot of groups, and Parks Bureau has been amazing. There's groups also called like Ivy League that are it's always going out and just pulling the ivy off the trees. Forest Park Conservancy has been another great force out there doing a lot of work, in West Multnomah Soil and Water Conservation District as well. And so you can actually drive through certain neighborhoods like in Linton where you can see the ivy has been taken off the trees, and maybe it's not all the way off. There's some up higher in the trees that have died off, but they've stopped the process and separated it from the ground vegetation. And so there's a lot of work that's been done to create a healthier environment within the areas like Forest Park. And that's the kind of work that needs to happen, because you cannot fireproof a forest. It's not possible, especially with what we have available to us in Forest Park. There's a lot of topography that makes it very challenging. And so removing the ladder fuels, removing the invasives like holly trees and laurel and things like that can really burn hot in there and that are super invasive, will make a more healthy environment. When you see a lot of ferns on the ground and things like that, that's what you want to see. You don't want to see all the invasives that are clogging up the trees and climbing up the trees and creating all sorts of havoc. It needs to be a healthier environment. So there's been a lot of work that's been done on reducing the types of invasives that are in the park, creating defensible space around the exterior of the park areas to protect the community that's on the other side. And so there's been grants that have provided for work like this in Linton. And a lot of the removal of the invasives has been done because of some of this grant work that has created a lot healthier atmosphere and environment in some of these areas. And so, yes, a lot more work needs to be done. But I've walked through areas like in Rocky Butte where 5 years before they had done the removal of the ivy off the trees and it still looked amazing. So it's not like you would necessarily have to do every year. Yeah. Going out there and doing the ivy removal that's been growing up the tree for years and years, it makes a huge difference. And the communities that we work with, we're very focused on the forest at first. And yes, it is a concern because everything's drying out. But being able to control what's on the borders of these natural areas and within the communities and the properties the community members have that back up to the natural areas, there's a lot of work that can be done to create that defensible space, harden the home, so you not only protect your home, but you also protect the natural areas if a fire is going either direction. And that's really what we have to focus on, because yes, there could be a large fire in Forest Park. Yes, it could be something that gets into the treetops, could be a canopy fire, that could be a stand replacing fire. But if it can burn through like it's supposed to and stay on the ground, then it will create a healthier environment, because then a lot of the natives that have been choked out by the invasives would be able to have their chance to come back.
Right, which is what they do in the controlled burns outside the city. Definitely. Is there anything that I have not asked that you feel is important to mention in this context of being prepared and, whether the city being prepared or people being prepared individually?
It's just that there's a lot of organizations and bureaus that we have been working with to update policies and kind of bring more people to the table to be able to do their part as well to reduce the risk of wildfires. And there's a lot of education that's been going on, but it is something that's fairly new in our area as far as being concerned about these large wildfires that we've been seeing happening on this side of the Cascades. And so, yes, it's kind of a new thing for us in this area, but we can stay ahead of it. We can do a lot of work to be able to be prepared and not be caught off guard, because we didn't do our homework and learn more about what these challenges could be if we do nothing. We have a lot of work to do, but yet a lot has been done. And it's just the beginning. What is everything going to look like 20, 30 years or more down the road? It could be very different where everyone's prepared. Everyone has the type of materials on their homes to keep them safe, knows what type of plants to keep away from their home and which ones they can have closer in, more like the fire resistant type plants. And if something happens, it's more like, oh, we've got a fire. It's happening. It's in this area. We know because we have this app on our phone that tells us what's happening. We're able to kind of follow it. If we need to evacuate, we will because we're prepared. We have go bags. And just creating a more resilient community and environment for us to be able to live in successfully and not be devastated if something were to happen that we were not prepared for.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Kim, for the work that you do. It's essential, educating people, I think is so important. And we'll be following these stories in the future in the Oregonian and on Oregon Live. And I'm going to drop a few links to stories in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening to Beat Check with the Oregonian. If you like this show, please give us a 5-star rating. It really helps people find the show. The best way to support our journalism and stories and podcasts like this is with a subscription to Oregon Live. You can do that at oregonlive.com/pod support. Thank you, and until next time.